In 1932, a small Austrian town called Wörgl printed its own money. But this money had a rule. Every month, it lost 1% of its value, unless you stuck a stamp on it. People stopped saving it. They spent it fast, on bread, on shoes, on fixing the church roof. Within a year, unemployment in Wörgl dropped by 25%, while the rest of Austria sank deeper into the Great Depression. Now imagine that idea scaled to the entire planet. Every banknote you own has an expiration date, 90 days. After that, it's just paper. No more money sitting quietly in a drawer. No more cash hoarded under a mattress while the economy starves. Every dollar, every euro, every hryvnia is forced to move, to be spent, invested, passed on. Economists have dreamed about this for a century. A currency that can't be hoarded is a currency that can't cause a recession. It sounds like the cure for stagnation itself. Money, finally, doing what it was always meant to do. Flow. But money that can't rest is money that never lets you rest either. Here's the first crack. Wörgl worked because it was one tiny town surrounded by a normal economy. People could always cash out, invest outside, or simply wait for the experiment to end. Scale that to a whole country, and there's nowhere left to wait. The moment your money starts decaying, your behavior doesn't become more active. It becomes panicked. Behavioral economists have a name for what happens when a resource is forced to disappear. It's called the use it or lose it trap. And it doesn't produce careful spending. It produces frantic spending. Picture payday. Everyone in the country receives their salary on the same date. Everyone knows the clock is ticking. Shops don't see steady demand anymore. They see monthly floods followed by monthly droughts. Prices spike right after payday, then crash right before the next one, because sellers know exactly when the money is desperate to leave people's hands. And here's the deeper problem. Banks run on one simple mechanic. They take your idle savings and lend them to someone building a business, buying a house, starting a life. Decaying money kills idle savings, which means it kills lending, which means the very system that funds hospitals, factories, and mortgages loses its fuel supply at the exact moment everyone is told to spend, spend, spend. The engine that was supposed to fix stagnation quietly starves the thing that builds the future. Now, the psychology begins to shift. When Weimar Germany's inflation spiraled in 1923, people weren't just losing money, they were losing the mental habit of thinking ahead. Workers spent their wages within hours of getting paid because by evening, prices had already climbed. That society didn't just suffer economically, it forgot how to plan. An expiring currency does the same thing, deliberately, forever. Not in a crisis, as a permanent rule of life. Watch what disappears first. Insurance. Insurance is a bet on a future you're trying to protect. But if your money vanishes in 90 days, you can't set anything aside for a car accident that might happen in 3 years or a flood that might happen in 10. The entire concept of preparing for the unlikely quietly stops making sense. Pensions go next. A pension is a promise, money you don't touch for 40 years so that older you can eat. But there's no such thing as 40-year money anymore. There's only 90-day money. An entire generation reaches 60 with nothing, not because they were reckless, but because the system made patience mathematically impossible. And notice what replaces saving: gambling. If holding money guarantees loss, but risking it on a lottery ticket, a bet, a speculative coin gives you a chance, however small, of keeping value, then risk stops being a choice. It becomes the only rational move left. Casinos and speculative markets don't grow because people become greedier. They grow because caution has literally been outlawed by the currency itself. Whole nations engineered to live only in the next 90 days. This is where it stops being an economic problem and becomes something closer to a mutation of the human mind. Every long-term institution humanity has ever built, universities, cathedrals, national parks, scientific research, even raising a child, depends on one quiet assumption: that value can survive the passage of time. That's not an economic idea. It's older than economics. It's the idea of legacy, that something you do today can still matter in 50 years. Take that away permanently, and you don't just change spending habits, you change what people are capable of imagining. Psychologists call this temporal discounting, the tendency to value the present over the future. Under normal money, discounting is mild. $1 today feels a bit better than $1 next year. Under expiring money, discounting becomes total. The future isn't discounted, it's erased. Look at what this costs civilization at the deepest level. Scientific research that takes 20 years to pay off, abandoned, because no institution can accumulate the capital to fund it. Forests planted for grandchildren who won't be born for decades. Nobody plants them because nobody thinks in decades anymore. Universities that exist because someone endowed them centuries ago with money meant to outlive its owner, that kind of gift becomes physically impossible. We built cathedrals that took 150 years to complete. We funded telescopes to look at light that left its star before humans existed. That capacity, to act today for a future we'll never personally see, might be the single most civilizing trait our species ever developed. An economy built entirely on decaying money doesn't just fix a recession. It slowly, quietly disables the part of us that can think past next season. And a civilization that can only think in 90-day cycles isn't really building a future anymore. It's just circling in place forever, mistaking motion for progress. Here's what Wörgl actually proved, buried underneath the more famous statistic. It wasn't that decay makes an economy stronger. It's that money was never really about the paper at all. It was always a way of storing trust. Trust that the value you create today will still mean something tomorrow, and to someone else later. Real wealth was never the number in your account. It was the ability to say, I can wait, I can plan, I can give something now and it will still matter in 20 years. That's not a financial skill. That's what allows love, ambition, and meaning to exist in time at all. A promise, a savings account, a tree planted for shade you'll never sit in. Maybe the real lesson isn't that money should expire, it's that patience, the quiet, unglamorous decision to hold on to something instead of spending it immediately, was never a flaw in the system. It might be the most human thing money ever let us do.